Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum. Eu vi mamãe Oxum na cachoeira, sentada na beira do rio. Eu vi mamãe Oxum na cachoeira.
Saudações de paz e de amor cósmicos, meus queridos irmãos de caminhada. Eu sou o Flávio Salazar Melquisedeque e mais uma vez, com muito prazer e com muito amor no meu coração, estou aqui ao lado de vocês em mais um Momento Quântico, o nosso programa carinhosamente veiculado pela TV Pax, onde nós nos reunimos semanalmente e tentamos trazer a luz da física quântica para as questões do nosso dia a dia, da nossa caminhada social, familiar, sentimental e espiritual, porque estamos chegando num ponto onde todas essas faces que compõem a unidade do nosso ser têm que convergir para um ponto em comum, e aí sim possamos experienciar e entender tudo o que acontece através de uma ótica espiritual, espiritualista e com o amor incondicional sempre permeando as nossas atitudes, os nossos pensamentos e os nossos sentimentos. Porque, no fundo, é isso que o nosso querido e bem-amado mestre Saint Germain, o regente, mentor e padroeiro dessa casa, espera de nós, nos ensina e vislumbra para o futuro da humanidade, a nova era e a era de ouro. Fiquem com esse termo na cabeça, nova era, porque hoje, ao longo do nosso programa, nós vamos estudar um pouco da sua origem e do intelectual, do escritor, do homem que criou esse termo nova era. Então, meus queridos irmãos, hoje nós estamos dando seguimento a um estudo que iniciamos no programa passado, que é sobre a gênese da humanidade, quais foram os desafios e o que a raça humana teve que passar para evoluir, para chegar até onde nós estamos hoje, quais foram as influências energéticas, conscienciais que nós sofremos aí ao longo dessa caminhada e por que hoje nós somos como nós somos, pensamos o que pensamos e atuamos dessa forma. Então, ao longo aí do nosso programa, nós estudamos vários conceitos. Desde o comecinho, estudamos a dupla fenda, o conceito de massa ser igual à energia, estudamos e a partir daí desenvolvemos muitos conceitos que passaram desde a geometria sagrada até canalização, faixas vibracionais, a matemática de Deus. Então, no último programa, tudo isso começou a converger para um ponto para promover o entendimento desse tema tão nebuloso que nós estamos estudando, que é a origem da raça humana, quais foram as influências externas interplanetárias que nós sofremos e até que ponto nós carregamos essas programações nas nossas atitudes, nos nossos pensamentos e nos nossos sentimentos. Alguns programas atrás nós estudamos as energias Yin e Yang e como o complemento das duas, a união das duas, cria um campo eletromagnético propiciador, atrativo, manifestador de coisas boas, e quando essas energias elas estão em desfunção, em desequilíbrio, como nada flui, as coisas não se manifestam na nossa vida. Então, seguindo aí a história que nós começamos a estudar no último programa, hoje vocês vão entender o porquê da humanidade estar hoje alicerçada em pensamentos Yang e aonde isso começou. Quem observa a nossa sociedade, a forma com que nós nos relacionamos com o próximo e nos percebemos dentro desse emaranhado de energia, pode chegar à conclusão de que nós estamos experienciando tudo isso através de uma energia masculina e que para resolver tudo isso, a gente precisa acessar o sagrado feminino e equilibrar isso dentro do conceito de unidade. Então, agora nós vamos trazer todas essas metáforas e esses conhecimentos do campo magnético gerado a partir da energia Yin e Yang para o contexto da Atlântida que nós estamos estudando e como a raça humana se desenvolveu a partir da raça Atlante. Então, meus queridos, seguimos aí com o segundo episódio da história da gênese humana e o que aconteceu com a Atlântida depois que chegaram os exilados de Capela, os nossos irmãos, que vieram para o planeta Terra e causaram aí grandes mudanças na raça humana. Fiquem agora com o segundo capítulo e voltamos após para refletirmos sobre.
Previously on Spirit Science. Recently, thousands of clay tablets were pulled out of a lost city thousands of years old. They described a new version of our history that is putting the pieces back into place. The continent of Atlantis was a thriving home for the human race, but we had visitors, one of which changed our evolutionary path forever. Something I should have mentioned last time, Thoth's father, Thome, was one of the Nakals who set up Atlantis on the island of Udal. That island, the top of the Tree of Life, was the brain of Atlantis, and on it was a small city called Poseidon. This city is what Plato was discussing when he said that Poseidon bore 10 children, the 10 circles on the Tree of Life. Poseidon was made of 3 rings painted in black, red, and white stones, and it was the symbol for Atlantis. The inner circle represented the Nakals. The middle circle were the priesthood, called the Maya, and the outer circle represented the regular people of Atlantis. We'll come back to this down the road. There were only a few thousand Martians who came to Earth through the synthetic Merkaba. The first thing they did when they arrived in Atlantis was try to take over the continent. They tried to declare war and invade. However, they were vulnerable due to their small numbers, compared to the millions of Atlanteans, and we finally subdued them. We were able to stop them from conquering us, but we could not send them back. When this happened on our evolutionary path, we now had the planetary consciousness of a 14-year-old girl. The Martians were an incredibly male species, and also very old, so what you had was a 14-year-old girl being taken over by a 60 or 70-year-old man. We had no choice in the matter. The Martians just stepped in and said, like it or not, we're here. They didn't care what we thought or felt about it. Really, it was no different from what the settlers of North America did to the Native Americans. Once the initial conflict was over, it was agreed that the Martians would try and understand this female thing they lacked, this emotional feeling which they had none of at all. Things more or less settled for a while, but the Martians slowly began to implement their left-brain technologies, which the Atlanteans knew nothing about. One after the other, the Martians kept putting out these left-brain inventions, until the Atlanteans slowly began to see things through their left brain. We slowly began to become a male species. The Martians gained control, bit by bit, until eventually they had all of the power, as was their intention. The animosity between Atlanteans and the Martians never subsided, not even till the end of Atlantis. They hated each other. The Atlanteans were shoved down and treated like inferiors. It was like a marriage that the female component didn't like, but the male component didn't really care if she liked it or not. It remained this way for a very long time, until about 26,000 years ago, when the next phase slowly began. Before we continue, we have to talk about polar shifts. See, in the 1930s, Edgar Cayce was channeling information for a geologist when he stopped and he said, "There's something you should know. In the near future, the Earth's poles are going to shift." Cayce was a brilliant man with a very strong connection to higher dimensions, where he communicated with other beings for the human race. Ultimately, it was because of his channelings that the belief system called New Age was created. This is again just putting what he was doing into boxes of understanding, because no one else understood what he was doing at that time. Nevertheless, when Cayce talked, people listened. Geologists began exploring the possibility of a polar shift, and they found something remarkable. A string of major pieces of evidence came forth and lent tremendous weight to what Cayce was saying, and they have now changed the world's view on the subject. Scientists believed that if there was going to be a physical pole shift, there would also be a change in the magnetic poles. Through studying lava beds, geologists were able to see where the planetary magnetics were when the lava beds hardened at certain depths. They found that the earlier magnetic poles were not where they were now, but in Hawaii. The last shift that took place was 13,000 years ago, and we will get there in the story soon. They did another test and found that it had shifted again 26,000 years ago as well. Scientists also learned that polar shifts happen very quickly. In a single day, the magnetics would do a complete flip, or turn 90 degrees. There's that number again. And within 24 hours, the sun would be rising differently than it did the previous day. This shift has happened hundreds of times over the last 100 million years on Earth, but it's speeding up now and happening faster and faster. Now only 13,000 years between each shift. A whole new viewpoint is beginning to be understood. From space, would this not appear as a pulse? Now, there's a lot more to talk about with polar shifts, but I'm going to give you the basics and provide sources if you want to learn more. A scientist named Charles Hapgood was studying this at great detail because the leading theory behind what caused polar shifts was still underdeveloped at the time. He came up with a theory that demonstrated to be possible through various experiments. Through these experiments, they learned that the surface of the Earth, the crust, could slip over the main mass of the Earth, which continues its rotation as if nothing happened. The crust would rotate and spin out of control until eventually it settles again in a new location aligned with the new magnetics. During this time, there are massive earthquakes and tsunamis and devastations that rock the world. Doesn't that sound a bit like the destruction described in the Book of Revelations? Now, I don't want to freak anyone out. Besides Edgar Cayce's account, many other ancient prophecies, including Nostradamus and Mayan prophecies, have talked about polar shifts in one way or another. And modern science is becoming increasingly aware that there is going to be a polar shift in our near future, which is lining up with our consciousness shift, though they don't take that aspect into account. It's funny actually. A while back, NOVA did 2 reports on polar shifts, and both times NASA shut them down. Then recently, NOVA released a new video, which I showed you a little bit of last time, called Earth's Magnetic Storm. That video shows all of the evidence for pole shifts without actually using the words pole shift. It's almost as if a specific company doesn't want us knowing about this and the evidence that's been brought forth. Polar shifts are directly related to the magnetics of the planet as well. Planetary magnetics are supposed to look like this, but the reality is much different. Our magnetics have been weakening over the last 500 years or so, and today, they look a little more like this. It was the magnetics becoming more and more warped that's causing many of the problems we've seen in the last 20 years. Birds follow the magnetics of the planet to migrate, and they'd be ending up in places they shouldn't be. Whales were continually beaching themselves in the 90s because they followed these magnetics, which led them to land where there should have been water. As for humans, you know how on the night of the full moon there are more rapes, murders, and violent crimes than any other night of the lunar cycle? Well, the moon affects the magnetics of the Earth, slightly. But the magnetics are so warped right now, it's affecting how we think and act as a planet. Our collapse of social structure is related to the geomagnetics of the Earth. Or perhaps it's the other way around. There's one other thing that we need to discuss about polar shifts. They always line up with a consciousness shift. They are interrelated. Thoth lived on Atlantis for a very long time, and he told us that he saw the Earth shift 5 times, watching the sun rise in the east, and then the west, then the east, then the west. This is how to explain why during a consciousness shift at the end of Lemuria, it sank beneath the oceans and Atlantis rose. If the crust was spinning randomly around the planet, many geological events such as continents rising and falling would take place. Now that we have an understanding of polar shifts, we can continue with this drama on Atlantis. 26,000 years ago, we were exactly where we were today on the precession of the equinox. We had gone through our falling asleep phase, and we were about to begin waking up. It was at this point that there was a small consciousness shift. We actually went down in consciousness, not up. A piece of Atlantis about the size of Rhode Island sank into the ocean. This caused a tremendous amount of fear within the Atlanteans, because they thought they were going to lose the whole continent, like what happened with Lemuria. Because of the consciousness shift, one of the bigger things they lost was their connection to the future. They couldn't foresee big events such as the potential sinking of their home. After about 200 years, this fear began to subside. Now, in both the Bible and the Sumerian records, the accounts of Adam, Eve, and all of their children were recorded to have exceptionally long lifespans, like 900 years or so. So 200 years for us back then is like 20 years for us today. We'll explain how we got there soon. Things kinda settled for a while, and then between 13,000 and 16,000 years ago, a comet approached the Earth. Because we were living at a high consciousness across all dimensions, the Atlanteans became aware of it before it hit. A great conflict occurred in Atlantis. The Martians, who were in the minority even though they were in control, wanted to blow it out of the sky with their laser technology. However, the Nakals had learned of the comet's true nature, and the Atlanteans protested. They said that the comet was in divine order. They had to allow it to take place naturally. Let it hit the Earth. That's what's supposed to happen. The Martians fought the Atlanteans, but in the end they gave in. The Martians agreed to let it hit the Earth. When the time arrived, it came screaming into the atmosphere, plunging into the Atlantic Ocean just off to the western shores of Atlantis, near where Charleston, South Carolina is now, only that was at the bottom of the ocean at the time. The remnants of the comet are now scattered across 4 states, and science has definitely determined that it hit at least 12,000 years ago, if not more. They're still finding pieces today. Although the main portion struck near Charleston, a few fragments actually hit the main body of Atlantis, crashing into an area right where the Martians were living, killing a huge portion of their population. They were pissed. They said, "It's all over. We're divorcing you, and we're gonna do whatever we want. You can do what you want, but we will never listen to you again." We know this whole bit. We've seen it in divorced families throughout the world. And the children? Well, look at our modern world today. We are the children. You can guess what the Martians did next. Their primary interface with the reality was control, and when their anger rose to meet their desire for control, they decided to take over the Earth. They began to once again create a complex like the one they built on Mars long ago to try and create another synthetic Merkaba. If they had succeeded, they would have gained control over everything on the planet. The only thing was, around 50,000 Earth years had passed since they had built a Merkaba, and they didn't quite remember how to do it. But they thought they did. The Martians built the buildings in Atlantis. They set up the whole experiment, threw the switch, and lost control. The destruction was immense. In this reality, you can hardly make a greater error than to create an out-of-control Merkaba. The experiment began to rip open the dimensional levels, not the higher ones, but the lower ones. To give an analogy, if you took a knife and slit open your stomach, the stomach acids would seep into other parts of the body that it's not supposed to be in. That's like ripping open the dimensions. The Martians almost destroyed the Earth. The environmental disaster we are experiencing today is nothing in comparison, though today's disasters are a direct result of these events. Because of this tear in the dimensional levels, a huge number of lower dimensional spirits and beings were thrown out of their comfort zone and into these higher levels. They were forced into a world that they did not know or understand. To survive, they needed bodies, and began automatically entering into the bodies of people. For every human body, there were hundreds of lower dimensional spirits inhabiting them. These beings were Earthlings, like us, but very different, not coming from this dimension. It was a catastrophe, probably the biggest the Earth has ever seen.
Então, meus queridos irmãos, espero que tenham gostado do vídeo de hoje. Espero que estejam conseguindo formar uma imagem, um todo na tela mental de vocês, juntando esses fragmentos, juntando esses pedaços de informações que nós estamos redescobrindo para montar uma gênese de uma forma que nós possamos entender sem mistificações e sem que os conhecimentos sejam ocultos e sejam usados para nos dominar. Fica claro aonde está a origem desse nosso comportamento masculino, vamos dizer assim, esse comportamento que vibra na energia Yang. Então, uma das formas de resolvermos, de transmutar tudo isso que aconteceu é experienciar a realidade através da vibração Yin, acessar o sagrado feminino dentro de nós. E voltando aí para o que foi falado no vídeo, quando essas consciências vieram, essas consciências interplanetárias, eles estavam numa idade consciencial equivalente a um homem de 60 anos de idade e encontraram aqui uma população atlante com o grau consciencial igual a uma menina de 16 anos de idade. Então, vejam como para eles foi muito fácil dominar isso, mas foi uma faca de dois gumes, porque eles usaram a tecnologia sem a consciência para tentar manipular a criação e aí rasgaram as dimensões e deu toda essa confusão que vocês puderam acompanhar nesse vídeo e que nós vamos continuar estudando nos próximos vídeos. E como se usou o termo tecnologia, eu queria fazer um paralelo e levar vocês a uma reflexão. O que é evolução e o que é avanço? Esses irmãos interplanetários que vieram desse outro orbe, eles eram extremamente avançados. Ou seja, o hemisfério esquerdo extremamente evoluído, e isso reflete na tecnologia. Eles tinham muitas tecnologias, mas a parte espiritual, o amor incondicional, não era acessado, era nulo. Por outro lado, vocês podem ver as civilizações ancestrais, tecnologia muito pouca, mas em termos de evolução espiritual, muito avançados. Então, sempre que vocês forem estudar consciências interplanetárias, tenham essa divisão bem clara na cabeça de vocês. Uma raça avançada não quer dizer necessariamente que ela seja evoluída. E vice-versa. Claro que uma raça evoluída, mais cedo ou mais tarde, atinge o avanço tecnológico dentro dos desígnios da criação, dentro dos desígnios de Deus Pai e Mãe. E é esse o desafio que está aí aberto. É esse a opção que nós devemos fazer como humanidade. Seguirmos esse caminho que nos foi apresentado desde a queda consciencial da Atlântida, ou transmutar isso para um caminho de evolução consciencial e espiritual, para um caminho onde junta-se a ciência e a espiritualidade, e isso é aberto e explicado a todos, está acessível a todos. Ao fazermos isso, vamos estar equilibrando a nossa energia yin e yang e promovendo um campo eletromagnético. E quando eu digo em campo eletromagnético, eu estou me referindo ao campo eletromagnético da raça humana, da humanidade, a realidade da humanidade. Se você tem esse campo yin e yang equilibrado no seu universo pessoal, você cocria, você manobra a sua realidade pessoal. Agora, quando estamos falando no coletivo, isso tem que ser sentido e tem que ser experienciado por todos nós. Então, fica aí uma reflexão. É muito importante nós estudarmos essas teorias, porque, vamos e venhamos, isso que nós estamos estudando são teorias. Não quero que isso vá de choque a nenhuma crença, a nenhum sistema de crença que vocês possam ter. Isso é só informações que estão sendo compiladas, e aí eu recomendo um livro para você, querido irmão, chama-se A Arqueologia Proibida. E lá vocês vão ter informações históricas que não são divulgadas e que vão conflitar com essa ilusão que nos é vendida dia após dia, com essa ilusão que nós aprendemos na escola e que nada tem a ver com a origem da raça humana e com quem você é de verdade. E é isso que o nosso querido e bem-amado Mestre Saint Germain sempre nos ensina. Mestre Saint Germain que estava no planeta Terra nesse período de Atlântida, ele que foi um grande sacerdote atlante. E no próximo episódio nós vamos concluir essa história da queda consciencial de Atlântida, e aí eu vou pincelar um pouco mais sobre a energia vital universal Reiki e qual era a atuação dela no planeta nesse momento, porque ela já existia nessa época, e Mestre Saint Germain, que na época era um grande sacerdote iniciado de Atlântida, o que ele fez com esse conhecimento, com essa informação, quando houve a queda consciencial, quando o Merkabah sintético e artificial foi acionado, rasgando aí as divisões vibracionais. Então, houve um acontecimento muito importante, liderado pelo Mestre Saint Germain nessa época, que com certeza iria afetar o grau iniciático de todos os terapeutas vibracionais. Todos os terapeutas holísticos em atividade hoje deveriam ter curiosidade sobre o que aconteceu com os conhecimentos esotéricos, espirituais, multidimensionais que a raça Atlante tinha naquela época. Então, meus queridos, fica aí o convite para que vocês continuem os estudos sobre esse tema que é de suma importância para que nós entendemos por que a sociedade está bagunçada desse jeito, por que os valores estão invertidos, e a melhor forma de você, através da iluminação e do equilíbrio pessoal, fazer isso florescer para as pessoas que estão à sua volta e juntos nós, como humanidade, transmutarmos tudo isso, passarmos por essa mudança de ciclo que são a inversão dos polos. Sempre existem dois caminhos para nós trilharmos a nossa evolução. E com certeza nós vamos optar juntos como raça humana de trilhar o caminho do amor incondicional, da fraternidade e da igualdade. Eu sou o Flávio Salazar Melquisedeque e me despeço de vocês de mais um programa Momento Quântico. Até a próxima semana. Namastê.
Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum. Eu vi mamãe Oxum na cachoeira, sentada na beira do rio. Eu vi mamãe